Hi everyone, I'm Xin from National University of Defense Technology in China. Today I'm going to talk about the efficient automated repair of high floating point errors in numerical libraries. This is a joint work with Li Qiancheng, Xiaoguang Mao, and Tao Ji. As we know, numerical libraries have been widely used to support numerical calculations for many scientific and engineering areas. Those libraries depends a lot on floating point arithmetical. However, floating point representation is by nature inexact. So, for the mathematical function and its corresponding numerical program, exists the floating point errors. So, for programs in numerical libraries, it should be written by experts and well maintained, which means they should be a good implementation. However, high floating point errors may still exist in numerical libraries. For example, high floating point errors may caused by yield conditional problem, which is in the nature of the mathematical feature of many functions in numerical libraries. So, what is a high floating point error? First, we introduce a floating point error. Give an input x, we know the mathematical function output, and we compare it with the numerical program output in floating arithmetical. We can count the number of floating point values between them. The number of floating point values, we call it ULP's error. In our paper, we use the log value of the ULP's error to estimate the number of incorrect bytes of output of numerical program. So we can define the high floating point error as follows. For input x is corresponding error bytes if larger than an error threshold. The error threshold can be given by users. We call the input x trigger a high floating point error. So our goal is to automatically repair high floating point errors in numerical libraries. Our approach includes three main steps. First is finding high floating point errors. Then we localizing, finally repairing them. So first we want to give a high level of view of our approach. For numerical program and its corresponding mathematical function, we first detecting high errors according to the given error threshold, and we get the input interval, which includes the inputs that can trigger high floating point errors. After that, we deriving approximation from mathematical function over the error to satisfy the error threshold. After getting the approximation, we convert it to patch. And finally, we apply the patch back to the original program and complete the repair. Next, we will illustrate our approach with example from the GNU Scientific Library. It is a Lagrange function in order 3, which is actually a cubic function. So for the first step, we're detecting high floating point errors. To detecting high floating point errors, we first should find the input xm that can trigger the possible maximal error. Then we should localize input interval around xm to enclose inputs that can trigger the high floating point errors. It is a search program to find the xm that can trigger the possible maximal errors. So we use two thickness function to guide our search. The first fitted function is the error base, which we use to evaluate the error the value of the arrow. And the second fitness function is the conditional number function. According to the arrow analysis, the forward arrow is related to the backward arrow and the conditional number. So the backward arrow is depends on implementation. It is small for good implementation. While the conditional number, it only depends on input and mathematical function. So when the conditional number is large, the high floating point arrow also may be triggered even for good implementation, which is a feature of the numerical programs in numerical libraries. So based on the two fitness function, we can start our search. First, given the numerical program, we first partition its input domain into many small parts according to the distribution of floating point numbers. In this way, we can keep some sampling rate in each small part. Then, in each small part, we use the differential evaluation algorithm to search the input xc that can trigger the possible maximal conditional number. Next step, we search around the xc to find the xe that using the Markov chain Monte Carlo sampling to search the possible maximal arrow base. So overall, to find the input xm, we first partition the input domain x to many small parts, and we search inputs that can trigger the possible maximal conditional number in each small part. Then we search around to find the inputs that can trigger the possible maximal floating point arrows in each part. Finally, we can get a list and we choose the max arrow from the list. We can get the xm and its corresponding max arrow. After getting the xm, we search around it according to the given arrow threshold. So we can get the input interval around the xm, which includes all the high floating point arrows. So for the previous example, we can say we found the xm, which is actually the around the root of the cubic function. Then we localize the I arrow for the given arrow threshold, which equals to 6.8. After detecting high floating point arrows, we derive an approximation from mathematical function over the I arrow according to the given arrow threshold. We first use the linear approximation to approach the mathematical function. For the ending points of the linear approximation, we store in the mathematical results for ending points. And for the middle points, we use the linear function. So in this way, we can get the linear approximation in this way. However, the linear approximation cannot good enough to approximate the mathematical function. The arrow exists between them. So we can use arrow function to represent the arrow between the mathematical function and the linear approximation. We use a conjective function to approximate the arrow function. In this way, we can add the conjective function back to the linear approximation and get a LC function, which is a more accurate approximation of the mathematical function. For the previous example, we can see the mathematical function and the LC function minus the linear approximation. In the graph, the red one is very close to the yellow one, which means our approximation is more accuracy than the linear approximation. So next, we do a iterative refinement based on the given arrow threshold. It's because the LC function may not satisfy the arrow threshold. So for one iteration, we choose the endpoints that trigger the maximal error between the linear approximation and the mathematical function. So for each iteration, we produce 2 new linear approximations, and we reduce the error of new endpoint to be 0. So in this way, because the finiteness of floating point numbers, we can finally get a composition of LC functions to satisfy any given error threshold. So overall, we use piecewise quadratic function, which is a composition of LC functions, to approximate the mathematical function over I error. So in the previous example, we use the quadratic function with around 1,000 pieces to approximate the mathematical function over the I error. So after getting the approximation, we convert it to program patch. So we should first store the approximation. For each piece of the approximation, we store the critical parameters, and we can get a 6 tuple for each piece of the approximation. So in this way, finally, the approximation will be stored in a list of 6 tuples. So for input x, we should first search the tuple it belongs, and then we construct the LC function. Finally, we can get the results of the approximation. However, it is a search problem to find the right piece to calculate the input. So we construct a polynomial function to estimate the index. So overall, our patch includes 3 main steps. First, we estimate the index. Then we find the exact index. Finally, we construct the approximation function to do the calculation. So after produce patch, we apply it back to numerical programs. So it is quite simple to apply it back. We just add a new branch to call the patch. If the input x belongs to the L error, we just call the patch. In other case, we just implement the original program. So in the previous example, after applying the patch, we can see that all high floating point errors are repaired. So next, we implement our approach by build a torn and AutoRNP, and we get the mathematical function from the MP-Math, which is the open source library for real arithmetical calculation. Our benchmark are 20 programs from GNCL's special functions. We detecting the maximal error of the 20 programs. We can find the maximal error is all larger than around 15 bits errors. We set 3 levels of error threshold for repairing. Please notice the error threshold is between the maximal error and the mean error. If the tau value is large, it means it is close to the maximal error. If it is 0, it means it is equal to the mean error. So we have three levels: high level, middle level, and low level for evaluate our approach. We said time elimination is 3 hours. We evaluate our approach from 3 aspects. First is we evaluate our approach performance on real-world numerical programs. The second is we compare with our AutoRNP with state-of-the-art tools. And finally, we investigate the influence of patch on the original programs. For evaluate the results, we use the accuracy of repair. The accuracy rate means the ratio of the number of test cases satisfy the error threshold among the 100,000 test cases. So for the results, we can see for the 19 of 20 programs, we complete repair and with 100 accuracy rate for all three error thresholds. However, for the program P20, it occurs timeout. We further investigated the reason, and we found it is the explanation function over the error. However, our approach, which uses the linear approximation and the quadratic function, cannot approximate the explanation function in the limited time 3 hours. However, we redo the experiments and successfully repaired it in 8 hours for the low level of error threshold. More specifically, we can say the maximal error improving is reached the accuracy requirement. The longer is better, and it is very close to the average bias corrector over the whole input domain. So next, we compare our tool with the state-of-art of tools. We construct a tool named HBG, which is based on the hybrid grind and HABI. HBG first used the hybrid grind to extract the floating point expression during execution that can be recognized HABI. HABI then improving the accuracy the floating point expression, then output a new floating point expression that is more accuracy. Due to the HBG only evaluate the average accuracy, improving the accuracy on average. So we compare our tool with the HBG, focus on the average bit corrector. So as shown in the slide, we can see the green one is better than the red one, which is HBG's results for the 3 error threshold and for all the 19 programs we repaired. Next, we compare the time after repair and the time before repair, the program execution time. So the time overhead over the error, we can say 19% over benchmark are faster. So the time overhead over the whole input domain, we can say the value is around 1, which means this result shows that our patch does not slow down the program after applying our patch. On the other hand, we accelerated the original program over the error. So in summary, in this talk, we introduced a dynamic analysis for repairing high floating point errors in numerical libraries automatically. So it includes 3 main steps. First, detecting high floating point errors. The second is deriving approximation from mathematical function. And finally, we produce patch. We construct a tool named AutoRNP, which is open source, and our experiments successful repair 19 of 20 programs in JSL. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, anybody?
When you do the repair, you do it in the reals with real computation. When you plug a float approximation of the real repair, so you might reintroduce inaccuracies, no? Or there is something I have not understood.
You mean how to know the mathematical results?
No, you have the library in floats.
Yeah.
You detect where there is imprecision.
Yeah.
You correct using a real computation. You compute on real, using the lab.
Yeah.
But then when you put the patch, you have to go from real back to floats.
Yeah.
And at that time, you could introduce inaccuracies that you don't control, in fact.
Actually, our approximation include the linear approximation and the error compensation.
In the reals.
All represent in floating point arithmetical. So we do some strategies to keep it enough accuracy. So in theory, we keep the mathematical results, we keep in endpoints of the line. So for the middle points, we just trying to keep it more accuracy. So we cannot guarantee from the the real to floating pointer, we cannot guarantee it is no errors, but we guarantee the endpoints. So
okay, anybody else in the room? We have a few on Slido. Do you have the Slido there? My phone just crashed. The top choice is, how do you obtain the mathematical representation from the actual implementation?
With mathematical results is from the we use the MP math to supply the mathematical results. It is based on the arbitrary precision. So that's how we get the mathematical results.
Okay, thank you very much.